Things now.
All right. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm with Marion Audubon Society. And our guest for today is Mikayla. She is with Rescuing Ocala Wildlife. They are a really great nonprofit organization which helps rescue orphaned and injured wildlife. And she is going to tell us about that organization and what we can do if we see an injured animal and what we should not do when we see an injured animal.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And we've got the PowerPoint tonight, so there is a little bit of a game in the PowerPoint as well. So we will unmute for that and get a little bit of audience participation. So just a little bit of overview about who we are. Actually, this is where my technical incapability will come in to see if I can hide us over here. Minus out just this screen for a second so we can see this. So just a little bit about who we are before we get into the nitty-gritty of it. So we are a new organization. We were founded last year in July 2022, and we obtained nonprofit status in August. So as a local nonprofit, we don't receive any state, federal, or county funding. So we rely basically on the good of the people. We really say all the time that we could not do what we do without the community behind us, and we mean that. So we are entirely funded by private donations. On top of that, we are entirely volunteer run. So we don't have any of our funding going towards paying staff salaries. Everything that people donate goes right back to our mission of saving injured, orphaned, and ill wildlife. So our main goal at ROW, or Rescuing Ocala Wildlife, is to bridge that gap between the injured, orphaned, and sick wildlife that people find across Central Florida and getting them to licensed rehabbers across the counties that we serve. So it can be a little bit confusing because we do serve Marion, Citrus, Sumter, and Lake counties. And when I say we serve those counties, those are the ones that we are physically driving around to pick things up from. So if we get a call from those four counties, whether it's something on the road, something that somebody has in their backyard, or maybe it's a bird with fishing line, or maybe somebody has it already in a box at their house. Those are the ones that we will go out and pick things up from. But then we actually travel to a total of 9 counties across Central Florida where we will go and drop things off at. So while those are only the 4 that we will pick things up from, we do go as far north as Gainesville to drop things off at places like UF. We've got a licensed rehabber in High Springs, and then we go all the way out to like Hernando County and down to Kissimmee. We have our reptile rehabber down in Kissimmee. So we are driving all over the place all the time to get things where they need to go. And there's vets offices kind of dotted all around in there as well. So again, we're 100% volunteer operated. And so whenever I talk to organizations like yours, I try to pepper that in. So you'll hear that a few times while I'm talking tonight, because I want to get that out and plant those seeds in your mind as much as possible. So ask us for more information. So we rescue nearly all wildlife, I would say. All of our volunteers use their own vehicles. So keep in mind the things that you would not be able to fit in the trunk of a Toyota Corolla. So bears, deer, coyotes, foxes, bobcats, also for the safety of our volunteers. We also do not do venomous snakes. We do rescue non-venomous snakes. And we do rabies vector species as long as our volunteers are vaccinated. So I myself am rabies vaccinated, and we do have a couple other volunteers that are. So we've got our little picture of our bat there. So we do rescue rabies vector species, but depending upon volunteer availability. So if we get 30 calls for bats, which we actually did get a whole lot of bat calls when we had that cold snap. I don't know if you guys remember, in October, there were like 4 days where it dropped down into the 20s and 30s overnight, just boom, all of a sudden bats got really, really cold and they were falling out of trees. So if we get all of those calls and I'm the only one available those days because maybe everybody is working or with their family, then we may not be as available as some other days, where if we only got calls for turtles, which maybe everybody's willing to go and pick up because turtles are nice and cute. I mean, look at that sweet little gopher tortoise face. So we do all birds, turtles, tortoises, and small mammals. So a lot of the animals that we go and pick up can be triaged pretty easily. This gopher tortoise on the ends there was a very obvious dog chew. This is actually a healed photo of her because the initial photo was a little bit graphic. And those are ones that are a lot easier to just take an initial look at, establish where they need to go. But we do teach all of our volunteers everything that they need to know about basic triage. And then we establish a transport protocol from there. We'll talk about that in our next slide as well. But if an animal can't be immediately triaged and assessed by us, we do have resources available to finders as well. So Lake County is one of the counties that we serve, even though we're an hour plus away from them. We may not be the best person for them to transport it to, but we may be able to say, well, if you're in Lake County, but you're closer to Claremont, one of our rehab partners, which is Back to Nature in Orlando, you might be only 20 or 30 minutes away from them versus driving an hour and a half away from us. So we do try to serve as just a community resource, even if they're not bringing something to us, just so that they maybe find us on Google or call Fish and Wildlife. They find our name. They didn't even know that they had resources available. So that's another main function of our organization. So a little bit more about what we do. We have had such a busy year already. In the months of January, February, and March of 2023, we have rescued over 150 animals. And just in March, we transported and rescued 77 animals. These are a mix of 2022 and 2023 animals we'll see on the right here in our photos. And because we're talking to our birders here, I tried to only put in birds for this one, but we do a lot more than birds, I promise. So wildlife, again, is triaged by our volunteers and dependent on species, age, injury, and their location, because we do cover such a wide area and transport to such a wide area. That does determine a lot of what our game plan is going to be. So we kind of have three different paths that an animal could take. So they may need to be transported immediately to a vet or a rehabber. Those could be things like a hit by a car or a dog chew, like we saw that gopher tortoise. They're bleeding a lot or they're in a lot of pain. So that barred owl you see there, she was hit by a car. She's got head trauma. You can see her squinting. That was an immediate transport to a rehabber. Then we may have another path, which is to stabilize the animal and transport as soon as possible. Actually, right before I got on this call this evening, I just picked up 7 baby opossums. They're going to be spending the night with me because our nearest rehabber for them is in Crystal River. So they're going to be staying the night with me and getting stabilized because I'm not going to be making that hour and a half drive right now. So in the event of those, they're going to be getting triage, getting stabilized, and then we're going to set up who can meet where and when. And then that kind of leads us to our third step. So when we would transfer them to another row volunteer or for a transport chain. So to get something like that into Citrus County, into Crystal River, we could set up, okay, who's volunteering on Wednesday? Who would be available to meet halfway? What's the best way? Could we meet in Denellen? Who could bring it then on a Wednesday morning? So not everything is 5-alarm fires. If it's a baby animal, it might be a little bit more stable, like that baby barred owl there. That one maybe doesn't need to get rushed somewhere right away. If we have somebody that's able to hold on to it, feed it correctly. The bird on the bottom there, you guys would probably know better than me. I think it's a thrasher. Feel free to correct me later. But that one was a cat attack. Same thing, does not have to be rushed off somewhere. I believe that one was already eating and was pretty, alert and bright. You can see the eyes are bright and alert. So that one, same thing, does not have to be rushed off somewhere quite as quickly as the other ones that we sometimes get. So because, again, a lot of our time is spent on the road, and we do cover a combined service area of 4,500 square miles. And again, that service area is where we pick up from, not to where we drop off to. We do a lot of driving, but not all rescues are these daring adventures of catching wildlife, climbing trees, untangling fishing line, or renesting owls. Over 50% of our rescues are just picking up things that are already contained. And a lot of people in this area are very able to contain wildlife. I went and picked up one the other day. It was a possum, and it was walking around in circles on the road. And the lady was able to contain it in a laundry basket and put a brick on the top just to get it into her yard and off the road and keep it safe until we got there. So a lot of our volunteers are retired or older, and they get a little bit intimidated by the thought of going out and doing things like, I've got the picture up there of us going and trying to catch this white pelican in a kayak, but not everything is quite that crazy. I like to say that we have a job for everyone because, again, our organization is so much run by volunteers. In fact, it's entirely run by volunteers. So if you can drive, if you can type, if you can knit, if you can help plan an event, answer the phone, there is something to be done by everybody. The duck on the bottom there, a little bit of a graphic photo, but she was fine. She was released very shortly after this picture, but that's some blood, a lot of arterial blood there because she had flown into a building and chipped her bill, and bills bleed quite a bit. It's almost like clipping your fingernail too short. They just spurt blood. They bleed quite a bit, but she was contained in a box already. So that's another case where, somebody could have gone and picked her up and just driven her to the next location, dropped her off at the rehab, maybe taken an hour out of your morning. So a lot of the times wildlife can be helped by those that find it, even if they don't believe us. A lot of people are intimidated by the things that they find because they just haven't had encounters with wildlife. A lot of people haven't seen animals up close before, but people, they really do amaze me sometimes with the things that they'll do, the lengths that they'll go to save wildlife. And again, we couldn't do what we do without the community behind us. The osprey right there in that photo was found on Camp just last week, actually crashed into the median. And the gentleman that found him did such an amazing job. He jumped out of his truck and picked him up in a jacket and actually met me at work in Denellen, drove him all the way across the county to drop him off to me there. So yeah, it really just goes to show that this work and the volunteer work that we do could be done by anybody. So we're going to get into our learning portion of the evening, talking about the birds and the bees and the possums and the squirrels. So this is baby season. This is what we are in the peak of right now, which is why we went from sort of a gradual incline in January and February to then picking up 77 animals in March alone. So baby season sort of technically runs March through September, but due to Florida's subtropical climate, it never really stops. Animals like gray squirrels and raccoons, they never stop breeding. Anybody that has ever been involved in domestic animal rescue knows that cats, we have a kitten season for cats, they never stop breeding either. But things like birds of prey, turtles, possums, they all line up in springtime. And that's why we have this massive baby boom in the springtime. So all the wildlife babies are born from this March to September. And that's why we have just this huge peak of babies coming in right now. But in addition to that, it's not just the babies, because you've got the moms who have to go out and forage for more food while they're nursing. They have to get more food and more water, which also results in them being out at abnormal times of day. And then you've got the ones that are mating. So they're going out of their home range. The birds are out more. And during that time, they're getting hit by cars. The turtles are crossing the roads. They're getting hit by cars. So many vehicle strikes. And we get calls for things like, why is this possum out during the day? Why is this raccoon out during the day? I think it's rabid. Bad things happen to animals when people think they're acting abnormally or they could be sick. So we do get adults that are injured during this time as well, but many, many babies, as you can see in the pictures here. So we're going to go through the signs and that could mean that a baby is in crisis, so that you guys can differentiate between a baby that is truly in trouble, ones that could be kidnapped, know what to do if you find them, and then we're going to take a little quiz at the end. So take notes. Up here at the top, we've got a baby possum. We just got in with his 3 siblings, the baby bunnies, and then that little baby bird. If anybody's good at their baby bird ID, jury's still out on him. We started out thinking that it was a sparrow, decided it definitely wasn't. And then we were thinking maybe it's a bluebird, maybe it's what do we decide? Maybe it's a wren. Still not 100% on him, but he's being raised now with his brother. There were two of those. So if anybody really is good at their baby bird ID, please talk to me, because we get so many babies that we're not 100% sure what they are. So the majority of baby wildlife found are not true orphans. Most of them are kidnapped by humans, because moms have a hard time managing all of their babies. You've got the baby raccoons over there. It's an example of the troublemakers when they get to that age. Mom has 3, 4 of those babies, and she says, okay, today we're going to be moving from tree A to tree B because we've gotten too big. We've outgrown this nest. We're moving on. So I have to move one baby at a time because you're too big. And mom raccoons pick them up in their mouth like a dog or a cat and has to drag them across, could be a half a mile, however far it is to the nearest water source. And she says, you 3 babies stay here and be really good while I move your brother. And she goes to move them one at a time, ever so slowly. And again, this is where these instances of mom maybe being hit by a car or running into a dog or an unfriendly human, any of these things can happen to mom as well, resulting in a true orphan. But a false orphan, we'll call it, would be this little baby hanging out on the screen, because these babies are like, okay, sweet, mom is gone. Now looks like the perfect time to go and climb somebody's lanai. And these 2 little babies were found climbing the lanai, which could be however far from the tree, but if it's not where mom left them, now she's got 2 other babies in the tree that she was moving to that she knows she has to get back to. And it really is an example of survival of the fittest. If these babies went off on their own, that's on them. Mom's got to go. She's got other babies waiting for her. They're all hungry. And so she has to leave. So other times, babies just simply fall out of their nests. Squirrels are the perfect example of this. They really don't make their nests well. Any windy day this past weekend, we had several calls for gray squirrels falling out of their nests. They're just not well constructed. They use a lot of Spanish moss, which if you just kind of give it a good shake, it'll fall apart. Doves, the same thing. Doves and pigeons, they just like cross a stick and call it a day. So a lot of them fall out of nests. But a lot of the time, those are able to be renested. Other days, birds will fledge, and any birder knows that fledging is a natural part of learning how to fly, and they really do need to spend time on the ground. They need to do their little practice flights. Mom will come down and feed them on the ground. They really are completely fine, but it can be alarming to see them on the ground. One thing that we hear repeatedly is, I've left this baby on the ground for 8 hours and the mom hasn't come and got them, thinking that it's similar to a mammal who will come and pick them up and move them back to the nest. And so a lot of this information is another thing that just speaking to the public and getting out there, spending time with them and talking to people about the myths and the facts and the difference between species behavior is just something to be aware of. But being aware of when babies need help being reunited, like putting a fledgling back in a nest, when it would really just jump back down, maybe re-injure itself, versus when they need to go to rehab, if they're injured or sick, or just leave them alone completely. Just let mom come back. Knowing these differentiations is really essential to not contributing to wildlife kidnapping. And most importantly, never, ever, ever feed any baby that you find, or any wildlife in general that you find. And when I say feed, I mean water as well. Really, I just mean anything by mouth. Anything that you put in their mouth is a risk of aspiration pneumonia, and it can lead to death. And we'll talk about that again. I think it's on multiple slides because I say it until I'm blue in the face. And then I just put this little scene from Monsters Inc. Put that thing back where it came from, or so help me, because we have renested so many baby squirrels, and the numbers are on a slide in a minute, that we're very successful with it. So putting the babies back is a huge help to rehabbers, and we'll continue to talk about that in a moment. So anybody that would like to play the little game that we're going to get to in a minute should take a picture of this slide with their phones or write this down. So these are how to tell if a baby is orphaned or in crisis. And all of this is on our website as well, which is www.rowildlife.org. But all of this is for a baby in crisis, because a lot of this is dependent on age, which we'll get to down at the bottom. So if they feel cold to the touch, and a lot of babies will actually feel icy, like they will feel much colder than your body temperature, not just room temperature. They will feel like ice when you pick them up. Anything that has ants or maggots, and maggots in the larval stage will look like little white worms, or any other bugs, fleas, ticks, anything, really any bugs, just red flag it. Any obviously broken bones. On birds, this can look like asymmetrical wings. So you can see them sitting in front of you and one wing can droop lower than the other, almost like at the shoulder. Vocalizing for hours on end. This is true for most animals. Baby birds can sit outside and just peep and peep and peep and peep, either because they are cold or because they're hungry. Again, over the weekend, we got calls for this, and it was fledglings that were on the ground and cold. And sometimes it's as simple as drying them off, getting them warm, putting them back outside on a branch. So it doesn't always mean that they need to immediately come in for rehab, but it can mean that they need just a little bit of help. Anything picked up or played with by a cat or a dog. And this is any part of the cat. Sometimes we hear that the cat just caught it between the paws, or that, she was just licking it or just grooming it. Any interaction with a cat or a dog needs to go to rehab. Bleeding or any visible punctures, they would need a course of antibiotics. And again, same for a cat or dog. Near a dead parent, unable to lift their head. And these three are dependent on species and age, because think back to a bird or a little tiny nestling may not be able to lift their head because they're just too small, and difficulty walking or standing. Again, if they spend all of their time in a nest, they're sitting on their legs all day, they may not be able to walk or stand. But a squirrel that's the size of the one down there that's getting rehydrated, that one should be able to walk or stand. Eyes glazed over or droopy. If we look up at those two rabbits in the corner, okay, if their eyes are closed or sealed because of age, that wouldn't quite be the same red flag as one who can't keep its eyes open because it's extremely dehydrated, or maybe has some head trauma or something like that. We saw in the owl, the adult bird owl, a few slides ago, that one had the droopy eyes. So those ones are a little bit extenuating circumstances, but still something to keep in mind. So the how and when to renest a baby depends on species and age. I truly could write a book on this. We could be here all night if we wanted to talk about every single species. So we're just going to talk about gray squirrels right now, because we do have the highest success rate with gray squirrels. We personally, for Roe, are 8 out of 10, 80% renest success rate for gray squirrels. So they make up the majority of our calls, but because we have the highest success rate, we are very confident in renesting them. We will renest them most places, or at least attempt it, as long as the baby is healthy. Again, going back to the last slide, as long as none of those boxes are checked, we'll at least try it, even for a tiny little pinky baby, maybe for an hour, and then bring them on in if it doesn't take. So after Hurricane Ian, we had 40 phone calls in one day for baby squirrels. And keep in mind, those 40 phone calls could have been a nest of 3 squirrels or a nest of 1 squirrel. That could have easily been over 100 squirrels that came in. And all but 2 of those phone calls ended in successful reunites. Gray squirrels are great because they're excellent moms. They don't have to be returned to the nest. They don't even have to go back to the same tree. So Ocala is developing quite a bit. There are trees being cut down, seems like every single corner you look at. We get a lot of calls from these companies. Thankfully, it seems like they at least care quite a bit when they do cut down these trees. And they'll call us and say, I found these baby squirrels. What do I do? And I tell them, put them back. And they say, well, the tree is gone. And I say, get them to the next nearest tree, even if it's across the field. And when it's a situation like that, when the tree is gone, it does take the mom a significant amount longer to come back for the baby, because she's startled. She just went through this trauma. More than likely, she went down with the tree as well. So there is the risk that she's injured, but most of the time, again, 8 out of 10, she will come back for her babies. So these are just some different examples on the right here in these pictures of ways that you could build a nest. These are not our photos. These are from a wildlife center in North Carolina, but I like them because the bottom one shows an example of something that you could use if it was a rainy kind of misty day to keep the baby dry. The tissue box, I would personally prefer to use something plastic because if it is raining, the cardboard's going to get wet and that baby's going to get cold. So I would prefer to use something plastic and then just punch a hole in the bottom with a pair of scissors or something. But things like that would work really well. So the moms would come get them out of temporary structures, does not have to be on the same tree, but they do have to be 4 to 5 feet off the ground. So that's what they're doing here. They're using bungee, rope. We've used ladders, but they have to be off the ground. So there's a few Facebook posts out there that say, just set them at the base of the tree, mom will come get them. I've never heard of that actually working. We get a lot of calls that say I sat them on the ground. Another problem with that is they're going to get covered in bugs. We have too many ants here. I don't know where that post came from. Please ignore it. Comment on it. Here's what you should do instead if you see that going around. We allow the moms 4 to 8 hours or until dark to come back and retrieve the baby. So it's probably a half an hour to getting dark right now. It's about 7:30. So if you found a baby right now, we would actually have you bring it in overnight and keep it warm and then try to reunite it first thing tomorrow morning. So just because it's getting dark doesn't mean all bets are off. All babies do need to be kept warm during the reunite process. So whether that's with blankets, towels, a fuzzy fleece blanket, or if it's a little tiny, when I say pinky baby, I mean they're so young that they do not have hair yet. You can use an external heat source like a hot water bottle, or if you like to go camping, they sell those like hot hands warmers. Those are pretty cheap. And then, always just make sure that you're adding what am I trying to say? A filler between them, like a blanket, like they show it with their little stuffed squirrel over there. Regardless of how long the baby has been out, I'm going to say it again, please resist the urge to feed them. Don't give them anything by mouth. I promise they'll be fine until either the mom comes back to get them, or if you wait that 4 to 8 hours, give us a call or your nearest licensed rehabber a call, say, hey, it didn't work. The first thing we do is get them warm. And the second thing we do is start rehydrating them. They will be okay. This image is up on our Facebook, on our website. If you have not seen it already, please take a picture of it. It's just like a little thought chart for if you found a baby bird. So if it's sick or injured versus if it looks totally healthy, if it's a fledgling versus if it's a nestling. So just to kind of help you guys kind of organize. I know in that moment, sometimes, I've panicked before finding an animal. What do I do? Who do I call? Okay, so now we're going to take our little found animal quiz. So I am going to open this back up. And if you guys want to unmute, then we are going to look at some pictures of baby animals and see if we can guess if they need to go to rehab or if they should be left alone. All right, so here's our first one. What do you guys think? Does she need help?
No.
No? Anybody else?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
It looks like there might be a scratch on her arm.
The eyes are closed.
Eyes are closed. Yep. Anybody else? So overall consensus, maybe?
Yes.
Solid maybe. So this is a yes. So there's a puncture wound right there on her arm, and it wasn't actively bleeding, but this is a result of a cat attack. Her eyes are closed just because she's young. So with cottontails, they have a little white dot on the very top of their head that actually, as they age, it goes away. So that's a little hack to age them. So her ears aren't up yet. As they get older, their ears go straight up. But her eyes are just closed because she's a baby. But the biggest red flag with this one is the puncture wound. And anytime I get anything like that, my first question is, oh, what kind of animals do you have? Are they outdoor cats? This is a cat attack. All right, what about this bunny? What do you guys think?
That's
Probably not.
No.
no.
It looks sleepy, but that might just be because it's a baby.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the sleepiness is a red flag. So and what's going to help is compared to his healthy siblings here. So the droopy glazed eyes are in the depressed appearance. This one was a harder one. That one is definitely red flag. But the healthy siblings here, you can't quite see it because we're here, but those healthy siblings were kidnapped. And what happened with this guy was they went out, they saw this one. This one was a dog attack. Well, not quite attack, but a pickup. And as a result, he had a little bit of head trauma. And they said, well, my dog got this one. We should go get the others. And they went back out to the den and they brought us all 3 bunnies. But you can see from those 2 compared to him, those 2 were doing completely fine. They're bright, alert. You can see that that white spot. They've almost aged out of it from the cottontails. That spot will go away probably about a week and then you'll know. But you can see the ears are totally upright on those guys. They have that like jumpy bunny eye. So this one, he still did need to come in. Those 2 definitely didn't. All right. What about our great horn?
Oh,
Oh, boy.
Does he need help?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
Nope, he's
Please
fine.
say no.
Yep. So he's fully feathered. You can see how he's pulling his wings back. They are held evenly. He is alert and reactive. And the human taking his picture, he is giving him a look. So we can tell that mom has taught him about stranger danger. And I really like about how he's sitting here between the tree and the bush. He knows how to hide. So I like his survival skills. He was on the ground for about 5 days. So they were worried that he wasn't flying away yet, that maybe he was on the ground for too long. But I think he was fine. We did go out. We actually went out and checked him, but he was fine. We tried putting him back up. He jumped back down. So we're leaving him. All right. What about these 3?
Oh my goodness.
These are gray squirrels. Any guesses?
It just
I'd say no.
depends where you found them and if their mom was alive. I don't know. Probably not.
That's very true. Yeah. So just on their overall appearance, and yeah, a lot of what we do gather comes from the finders and asking where they were found and things like that. But just by looking at them, I would say no. So one thing to note is they do have fleas on them. So not everything is black and white. Yes, they do have fleas. So if we were going with, well, they do have some bugs on them. Yes, fleas can make them anemic, but they look very pink to me. So anemia can be very easy to spot on animals. Sometimes they will be like completely sheer white, but look at how plump these babies are. These are what we call mom-fed babies. When they get these nice round bellies, nice round, even down to their fingers, like they look so well fed. Their faces are full. When we feed our babies formula, they don't get the same appearance as these guys. It's just not as good, which is another reason we're always stressing, please leave them out where they belong. They do so much better with their moms than they do with us. So they have a really good color. They just look really good. What about this one? Did I mention possums? Did I forget that? I think I forgot that, didn't I? Okay, I forgot this one. You guys got to pass. So reptiles and possums are the 2 that we don't take in reptiles at all, because as soon as reptiles hatch out of an egg, they don't need a mom. Possums, anytime they are found, anytime they're found at all, it's because they should be with their mom and they're actually true orphans. So sorry, I forgot to mention that. I must have missed that bullet. I'm sorry, you guys. So yes, his mom has no idea he's gone. So with possums, they either, by the time that they're at this stage, they have either fallen off of mom's back, which is what we call being a mom bus, or if you see a dead mom and you check her pouch, then of course that's the dead parent. But by this stage, he did need help because he had fallen off of mom, and because possums just are not good at arithmetic. They have terrible counters. They can't tell when a baby has gone missing. So anytime you see a baby possum this age, it's just because they were riding along on mom. She could have gotten startled and jumped away from something. She could have squeezed under a fence and a baby fell off. But possums, we take in. Reptiles, we don't. We do get calls for baby turtles. People think that they should be with a mom, but of course they don't need her. Okay, what about this one?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's real young to be left without a mom.
It is young. Would you renest it? Or would you just take it?
Possibly if you can keep him warm enough. If it's a squirrel and the mom's coming back, then yeah.
Yep, this is a gray squirrel. Anybody else? Renest or take? Any other guesses?
No.
Sense? So I put this in as a solid C. So due to age, pinkies eat more often, they get cold faster, and they're prone to injury from the fall. This one looks healthy, so I would say yes to attempt a renest, but the clock is ticking, so don't wait. And I've had some people say, I found it last night. Should we try again today? This is not one where I would say it's getting dark right now. Let's try again tomorrow. This is one that I would just I'll tell you about checking the possum pouch. So possums, if you see a deceased one, checking the pouch is very easy. And there's a very easy way to tell if it's a boy or a girl. Boys have something that girls don't. So checking the pouch, if the mom is deceased, you flip them over and you basically just reach inside, and they're marsupials. So they have a pouch like a kangaroo, a possum, a wallaby, anything else. And you can reach inside and you can see the babies in the pouch. If they're big enough, like, let's see if I can go back. I think mine locks me out. Let's see. If they're this size, you will see the tail sticking out of the pouch. If they're smaller, if they're pinky size, then you do have to open the pouch and look inside. And the pouch is pretty deep. Like you can pretty much fit your whole hand in it. But sometimes if the babies are too small, they will be still attached to mom's nipple. And if they're that size, I would recommend, if you aren't grossed out by it, transporting the whole deceased mom to a rehabber, because it can be difficult to detach the babies from the mom. If you don't do it correctly, they can actually aspirate between detaching them from mom. And when they're attached to the nipple, there's like a suction, but between their mouth. So that's why babies need to be tube fed. And we always, again, tell everybody not to try to feed babies. If they're this size, they will latch, let go, latch, let go. You can just take them off. If they're tiny little pinky babies, detaching them is a little bit more difficult. So sometimes just taking the whole mom and bringing them somewhere is a better choice, or calling us and having us come to you, depending on, again, location. So always check pouches. We're getting a lot of calls right now this time of year for babies in pouches. So I think that message is getting out there a lot more. And we really appreciate it, because we have over 30 babies in rehab right now that have all come from a deceased mom. This baby and one other are the only two this size that have come in. All the others have come in that are fetal. All right. So yes, the pinky babies, you definitely keep them warm when you are renesting them, an external heat source. And the pinkies, we would only give them about 2 to 3 hours, probably not the 4 to 8 hours as everything else. Pinkies are very easy to tell. If they did get hurt in the fall, they kind of get a little bit more of a bruised look to them. So this one, it looks pretty good, looks pretty plump. Their skin kind of tense up a little bit more, so you can see that this one is hydrated. So yeah, I would say go ahead, as long as you know the location, try to renest him, or near the tree where he came from. See if mom comes back for him. So the last thing I want to talk about is human wildlife conflicts. So in 2022, the number one reason we got calls was for vehicle strikes. And we see that in pretty much all species. We get a lot of calls for sandhill cranes down in the villages. They're hit by pretty much everything: golf carts, cars, golf balls. And poor things down there have a really hard time with existing near humans. But we do see it in strange species too. We get hit by cars for kestrels. We get them for woodpeckers. So nothing is immune to human conflict. Second reason we got intake spot in 2022 was for cat attacks, and we don't have data for whether those were owned cats or feral cats. And then orphan babies. And again, whether those were true orphans or not is very hard to say, unless they're next to a dead mom. We also get a lot of intakes for fishing line, fishing hooks, other man-made materials. Down there at the bottom, that's a raccoon with his head stuck in a peanut butter jar. And the anhinga, that's that landscape netting, or I think they use it sometimes around the sod that's pre-rolled and then they roll it out. So we don't even always know what some things are. I got another one off of an anhinga that is like a carpet fiber, and I don't even know what it is still. So we don't even always know what these man-made materials are. Secondhand poisonings, rat baits, and herbicides. Even we started to see a lot of rabbits from the villages who are poisoned from spraying the grass, and then the rabbits go out and eat the grass and the rabbits are dying. So we had 4 intakes of poisoned rabbits in about a 2-month window last year. Haven't seen any again yet, so that's good. But it can happen. So it's not just, being aware of not using rat baits. It's keeping as much of your household natural and using as few things that can impact the environment as possible. And then we do get birds, snakes, lizards. I'll pretty much go out and rescue anything, especially because these glue traps just break my heart. Glue traps, sticky traps, whatever you call them, they are horrible. Even when they're used correctly. This glue trap down at the bottom left corner was actually inside. It was in a shed, and it was I want to say it was a wren, a Carolina wren, that fell onto it. And so if you ever have that happen, or if you know anyone that happens, never try to remove them. She did try with the oil trick. She put baby oil or coconut oil or something on it, and you can see the damage that was caused. That's actually a little bit of skin that came off with him, and those are all flight feathers. He did not have any flight feathers left. So never try to remove them. We got a red shoulder hawk last year that was on one of the industrial sized glue traps that was meant to go underneath like a refrigerator at a restaurant somewhere, and they tossed it outside and it was on top of the garbage can and there was a snake in it, and then food chain. The hawk went for the snake and the hawk was stuck in it. So anytime you see one of those or hear about one of those, just put the animal in a quiet, dark place. You can throw a sheet over them. If it's one of those handheld size ones, we stick them in a pillowcase until we can drive them somewhere. But my volunteers and I drive around with cooking oil and we heat it up and we'll remove them on site as best we can. And we also use flour and cornstarch to get it off. So knowing the proper method to do it though as well is just as important as having the proper tools. So just please don't ever take them off. Pretty much all of these conflicts are avoidable though. Like not using the pesticides, properly disposing of your peanut butter jars so your raccoons don't get stuck in them. I would say the majority of these calls, picking up your fishing line, discarding of it properly, even if it gets stuck in a tree, just pull it back down. So again, a large part of our mission is just talking to people about, for one, how common these occurrences are, because I think a lot of people think like, well, birds don't really get stuck in that fishing line and things like that. So how to help, again, completely volunteer run. We always need help with everything. So if you have a best friend who's good at bookkeeping and they just retired and they want to do something on their weekends, send them our way. We're not just doing the weird rescues all the time, even though if you want to do weird rescues, we can accommodate that. That's fine. But if you can drive, give us a call. we do a lot of driving, and we're trying to bridge that gap between the disconnect. So there are so many people that find wildlife in need of help, and people are busy, especially a lot of people that have kids and jobs and lives, and they say, well, I found this animal and I want to get it help, but I can't drive it an hour and a half to get it where it needs to go. But maybe you live on that side of town, and so we can make that chain to where we drive it 20 minutes, you drive it 20 minutes, they drive it 20 minutes, and they may change a lot of hands, but if you can drive a box, we've got the job for you. And you really truly are helping to save lives, because otherwise these animals would have nowhere to go. We also need help from people like you guys who are knowledgeable about these birds. Like I said, half the time we don't even know what the baby bird is that we picked up. All we know is it got attacked by a cat. Now it's going to rehab, and in 3 to 4 weeks, you'll have a fully formed something. So a lot of the time we just need help, but from knowledgeable people. We get calls sometimes and we don't actually know if the animal is injured or not. We had a call about a wood stork last year, and the lady said it was out over the pond and it was doing something really weird. And one of the village birders went out and took a look at it for us, so that I didn't have to make an hour drive round trip, and I was able to go out and continue helping other things. And she called me back and said, he's just hunting like a normal wood stork, using his wings to make a shadow over the water and catching fish. So if I had driven down there and turned away other calls or put them on hold, those would have been lives on the line, just so that I could go down and say, no, he's being a normal wood stork. But thank you for caring. We don't want you to not call and not report those things. But a lot of the time we just need people to go and check on things. And again, this is the same as with fledglings, and go out and look. And does it need to be renested? Is it just a regular fledgling? Is it okay? Should we just dry it off, warm it up, stick it in a tree? Should it come in for help? Just having those eyes and ears are really helpful for us. And if you like doing events, if you like coordinating things, if you like talking to people, I know a lot of you guys were at our Wild Neighbors Walks. You guys helped so much with the Wild Neighbors Walks. Doing things like that are always a huge help to us as well. And so not every day is the same. If you enjoy doing things like that, like I said, there are wild, crazy calls. These are just a couple of those. We had an anhinga that was stuck in a tree in the villages. This is early last summer, and fire rescue gets involved with a lot of things with us, whether it's ducklings and drains or anhinga rescues. That was a great horned owl caught in a soccer net. So again, some human conflicts, and a barred owl hit by a car. But especially anytime there's a hurricane, even if you guys would just like to help around those times of crisis, we always need help. And it's just 1 day a week that we ask for, just so that we can continue to rely on our volunteers on a regular schedule. And then these are just some phone numbers for reference. These are mostly bird related ones. We have different ones for mammals and reptiles, but I figure I would know my audience here. So if you guys wanted to take a picture or write it down, this is again on our website too, but these are the rehabbers that we work with the most often. And then FWC Regional, this is for Ocala. They are closed on weekends, but they will refer out as well. So they dispatch to all of us. And then I will just open it up if you guys have questions or anything else.
Mikayla, let me put my video back on. So if we have someone who contacts us and they have a bird that they're concerned about, should we have them contact you directly, or would we send them first to one of the other numbers?
Yeah, you can have them contact us, and then we also, like I said, we triage, and we'll kind of, based on what their needs are, if they're closer to one of the rehabbers we work with, sometimes I send them directly there. But if they're in Ocala or Lake County or somewhere that's without any other types of service, then I can always help them out too. Sometimes if we had a call yesterday in Mount Dora, nobody is out there. One of our village volunteers may be able to meet them halfway, something like that. So sometimes it's better just to get a hold of whoever they're able to first, and then have us just kind of see, where they're located, what's going on, if it's after hours, just who's available, who can take the call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do
Okay,
a lot of stabilizing and triaging. So if it's just something that just needs to get somewhere, we don't mind taking it.
thanks.
Oh, I see there's some things in the chat. Yes, so avian flu, we are going to be continued to be concerned about it, but it's sort of like COVID where it's not going to go away. So we're learning to just live with it. We take precautions with it, but we are always going to continue to take protocols, wearing gloves, we use pee pads and like puppy pads and just change those out in between birds, wipe everything down. We use a lot of rescue brand wipes, just wipe everything continuously. And the rehab centers are the ones that there's still a couple that are not taking birds because where they have high volume intake and where they have birds that are permanent residents where they sit in the cages and things like that, they are the ones that have more of a concern for an outbreak affecting them where it could potentially come in and kill their entire population of birds. But where we don't have a standing, the word coming to mind is inventory, but that's not right, a standing population of birds that live within us, we are basically we're like an EMS, like an ambulance service where we are having birds temporarily, any animal temporarily, and then we're transporting them to the next rehab or the vet hospital or things like that. So our main concern is just how can we keep things clean between patients? So it is a concern, just like avian pox though, there's always going to be diseases that we have to be aware of, that we have to take precautions with. Okay, you found a young anhinga fallen from the nest. That would probably be one that if it was struggling and had fallen from the nest, I would have red flagged that. Especially if it was struggling, couldn't move its head, couldn't lift its head. If it was, I would look at the feathers. And if it was fully feathered, looked like it should have been old enough to be swimming, should have been doing a little bit better. I grab pictures of everything. I always have everybody send us a picture so that we can kind of guesstimate its age a little bit better. If it had fallen from the nest, it could have had injuries from the fall. The fact that it wasn't lifting its head maybe could have had head trauma. A call also never hurts. I don't mind talking to people and saying, no, it's good, go put it back. Yay, happy ending. I love happy ending calls. So I would have maybe made the call. I wouldn't say that it died, but I wouldn't have minded taking that call for sure. Household items, we always need towels, all size towels, bath towels, hand towels, washcloths. We need Dawn dish soap, and we need, I'm going to say the name wrong, I think it's Odoban. You can buy it at Lowe's. It's like the detergent. We throw it in the washer with all of our bird laundry, again, because it kills the germs from avian flu. Those are the main ones that we need. Bleach, also bleach. All right. Did I answer your questions enough? Drop off donated items. I can give you my home address. I'll type it in here. And then we also have a business in Denellen, and we take drop offs there too. So that's my home address, but then I will give you guys our business address too, where we are all the time. That's our business. Drivers do not have to have a rabies vaccine. No, everything we give just to our drivers, we call them prepackaged. So they're either in a cardboard box or in a blue tote. You saw some of the pictures of the animals there have like the air holes drilled through a blue tote. So we will give you guys your box, and then every one of our animals travels with a intake form that says this was the finder, this is the animal, and then this is the destination. And then we say, here you go, take it onward. And that is it. Only thing we need from our drivers is a valid license, valid insurance, and valid registration. And if you are interested in volunteering, you just have to go onto our website, which again is www.rowildlife.org. And there is a volunteer application on there. It's super easy to fill out. Basically just asks your name, your birthday, are you over 18? And then those exact questions of if you have valid everything to drive, and then what counties you would want to volunteer in, because again, we serve counties and then we travel to counties. So it just asks which ones you would want to be in. Oh, yay, the baby great horned owlet. Yes, that was one that we renested, and that's something else that we need donated is items for renests. So if anybody has large, like really, really large wicker baskets that are the square or rectangle shapes that don't have the handle over the top, I go thrifting for those, and I just went right before Easter, which of course there weren't any. So maybe after Easter now, those will start hitting the thrift stores, or the laundry baskets that are the square baskets, not the deep baskets, because we use both of those for our owl renests, and also milk crates. So anything like that, if anybody has those laying around their house, if you had a shed out back that just was like full of milk crates and you had nothing to do with them until now, we can use those as well. All right, anybody have anything else? Anything, any burning questions? All right, well, we have our final walk for our Wild Neighbors series. If anybody wants to join us, it is this Saturday. It is at the Bay Lake Trailhead, which is in Lake County, but it's not so far from Ocala. It's about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depending where you are. And it is at 10 a.m. and free to come and join us if you want to come on down. The theme this time is herpetology. So we will be doing all things reptiles, and that is with our reptile rehabber. Her name is Kim Titterington, and she runs Swamp Girl Reptile and Rehabilitation out of Kissimmee. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see what all we can find. I know there are a lot of gopher tortoises there, and she did see a rattlesnake there not too long ago from a safe distance. So if you guys want to come and join us, it should be a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you guys again for having me.
Thanks, Mikayla.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Have a good rest of your evening. And if you find
you
any
so
babies
much.
or anything else, give us a call.
Very interesting. You kept right to the facts, which is what we needed to know. So thanks a lot.
Of course.
Have a good night,
You too.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.